appreciate you joining us.
Oh, please.
You are certainly a larger-than-life figure. Among your accomplishments, in 1968, you ran for president. You received 47,000 votes. Among those who supported you, Hunter Thompson. Also, that same year, a dollar bill was circulated with your picture on it. It actually made it into circulation.
Well, no. Well, let me explain that. It was being used in the money machine.
Right, in money machines.
It would change you for 4 quarters.
Right, because it was perfect.
And that's where the Secret Service came to arrest me, but they couldn't.
You know, it's widely known that you were an integral part of the civil rights movement. Several years ago, you actually flew some supplies down to folks in Mississippi that were suffering under some brutal rule there. You were at the marches, you were at the sit-ins, you were at the meetings with Robert Kennedy, with John F. Kennedy, but you always found time for humor. John Lewis, in his autobiography, talked about the night before the march between Selma and Montgomery, and he said that you all were at the chapel at the campus of Fisk University, and you were talking about George Wallace, who was the segregationist governor of Alabama at that time, and you said it would be just your luck, referencing the marchers, that by the time you got to Montgomery, you figured out that Wallace was colored.
You see, what most folks didn't know, Johnny Ford, that was a long-time mayor of Tuskegee, the white woman he was married to was Wallace's sister's daughter. So there was a whole lot of trickiness that was going on that didn't nobody know about.
On another occasion, when you were introducing Dr. King, you said that he was the only celebrity in America that gave out more fingerprints than autographs. What role did you see comedy, humor playing in the movement?
None, absolutely none. You know, we will find a cure for cancer, sugar diabetes, Alzheimer's. It won't be through humor. America has won every war we fought. They said no comedians over. When it comes our turn, I have never heard nobody, one of the brilliant minds on the planet was Mark Twain. Nobody ever asked him what role did comedy play. And although what he did had more to do with the end of the Civil War than Abraham Lincoln in his book, you know, because 90% of white folk didn't own slaves. And so when they had to read Nigger Jim, remember, before Mark Twain did that, nigger didn't have a name. Hey, you nigger. And everybody looked. And Mark Twain, with his brilliant self, he said, this nigger's going to be named Jim. And for the first time, nigger had a name other than nigger. And when you read that, when they're sitting on the banks fishing, they're not fishing massa to slave. It was the first time captured in print, 2 human beings. They're sitting there talking. And so I would take it as an insult if to black folks and humanity if I reduced this thing down to some jokes. Man, every time I went south, I knew I would die. And when my wife went south, we knew we would never see the children. The only reason I'm alive, my 2-week-old son died when I was with Medgar Evers, and me and Medgar knew they was gonna kill us that night. And I said, it's a pleasure to die with you, man. And then we get the call that my son had died. I said, well, I'm not leaving the rally till it's over. Instead of me going back to his house, because you couldn't stay in hotels, where they was waiting, I went to Memphis and got on the plane. So that was serious. I mean.
But you don't think some of those routines you did during the movement had an impact on certain people's perceptions of race and racism and segregation?
Well, I had a New York Times reporter asked me at the nightclub one day, said, what percentage of those white folks, not negatively, do you think is laughing at you because they're guilty? I said, if you've been black as long as I have, you know there's some black folks whiter than white folks, so I cannot look out there and take the privilege to decide that's a black person or white person. But you as a reporter, you have a right to go and ask them. Mm-hmm. Look, I'm funny, man. I'm funny 24 hours a day. I didn't just get funny when I was a comedian, is you put time into it. The biggest yaks you ever had in your life, man, didn't come from no professional comedian, friends and relatives. And so I've always been like that. Oh, I walk down the street and I'd be saying stuff to myself. And so when I got there, I didn't change. Now, if I'd have been afraid, I might have. I was in the military, I never went to war. But if I'd gone, they wouldn't ask me about no political humor. They wouldn't ask me, say, man, did you think they dropped them guns? No, I'm at the movement, okay? The strongest two forces in the history of America has been the black woman and the black church. 98% of the people in the forefront of that movement had Reverend in front of their name before they had PhD. I was there. I was living, reading myself. I wasn't trying to get nothing for my children. When I bought a Rolls Royce, it was for me. I ain't got no guarantee my children go up and buy one and won't let me ride in it. I'm tired of the cop out. I want to get this for my children. No, you get it for yourself. Every time I went down there, I carried money down. When I ran out of money, I borrowed money because I was saying thanks to those folks who I'm looking at, those folks that don't know if they're going to live or die. I didn't have to go through that. I had a amount of protection with me, the Justice Department. They didn't care nothing about me, but I was world renowned. And that's what that whole game was about.
But we talked about the fact that you had an influence on Cosby, you had an influence on Pryor, and to a lot of the public, those two represented, yes, they represented comedy, but it was more than laughs. I mean, they were part of changing the perception of black men, of black people in America. It wasn't just humor.
The great thing of me being alive, can't nobody lie on me, even if they mean it.
Right. But nobody's derogatory. They give you your props.
I know. I don't mean.
But they also talk about these quips that you had. I mean,
Yeah,
you had some zingers.
But I had them all my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
So they were just that. They didn't have any significance. They were just.
it probably did have to, but that was not my intention.
Right. You were just being Dick Gregory.
I was being Dick Gregory.
I understand.
And amused and happy and saying, that was my way of saying thanks. Let me tell you, if you and I was together, and I really didn't care that much about you. I mean, you wouldn't hear me tell jokes. When you hear me laughing and rocking, man, that's me. Sometimes I get up on that stage, I sound so good, I wish I was listening to myself. So I know the show is going to be good because I'm not satisfying them people out there. I'm satisfying me. And when I walk out, I used to put it this way. If I walked up on the stage and 10,000 of the biggest racist haters, Ku Klux Klanners was in my audience and laughed their butt off, I'm a failure. I'm a failure. If I go down south to liberate me in this whole situation and people laugh, I'm a failure. When I walk up on that stage, I go to make you laugh. When I go down there, I go with my, when I walk on the stage, I don't assume I'm gonna die. Every time I went south, I assumed I was gonna die, because I knew how vicious it was, but I was willing to die with them. And so that was just my demeanor. Hey man, I wore $5,000 and $6,000 suits. And somebody said, oh, he dressed so good, that won a lot of people over. That wasn't that's just the way I dressed.
So as you see it, the comedy and the movement, two separate entities, had absolutely nothing to do with each other.
I wrote 13 books, and now I'm the boss. Not one of them books that I talk about how well my comedy did with liberation. There's never been a movement in the history of the planet, including the Jesus Christ movement. Not because Jesus didn't exist, but there's no record. It's hearsay. That don't mean it ain't right. This movement has records. This movement, you can't lie on it. You can't lie, add something to it or take something away. And so that's, you see, when I was a little boy, I wanted to be John Wayne, man. I mean, I'd go to the movies and I'd walk out, and all the heroes, I'd walk down the street. I'd be so embarrassed I had to walk through the alley. When Clark Gable say, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Every other word. If I remember, say, you care for them apple pie? Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. What you say, boy? You know, but I became world renowned in track and field. I ran the fastest mile. I was the first Negro to win a state cross country championship when everybody, including black folks, were convinced that we were genetically engineered to do short races. Mm-hmm. And that was a great feeling because I didn't like my mama, I didn't like my house, I didn't like my neighbors, I didn't like my brothers and sisters, because I was serious as a little boy about God. I believed my inheritance come from God, and that crap I was looking at, if that came from God, I don't want to be with it. I mean, you telling me this is my inheritance from the creator of the, I'm not buying into that. And so consequently, with all of that I had in me, trying to escape, trying to get away and run from it and all of that. And so one day, I looked around, and the heap, man. No Negro in the history had ever won a state mile championship across country. And that feeling, and then show business, man. That feeling, wow, John Wayne, The feeling I was looking for was in the civil rights movement, man. That's the first time I felt like a cowboy. That's the first time I felt like Jesse and Frank and all my heroes. That's what, it did more for me than I did for them. It's something I had been looking for. Oh, nobody knew it. My mama didn't know it. My friends didn't know it. I found it. See, I didn't know a little Negro from St. Louis, Missouri, didn't know what my daddy was. See, born before welfare, if it had been welfare, we'd have been on it. Could terrorize white folks, man. The only white folks I ever seen, no white folks in my neighborhood. We went to black restaurants with Negro movies. I seen no white folks.
And you went to Sumner High School.
Sumner, all black schools, everything. I couldn't believe white folks would be scared of me. And I was happy.
During those times when you went on stage, was the performance cathartic for you?
No, I was just, look, I do what's in the news. You know, that's what set me apart.
Current events.
For instance, I was in California last week when all them politicians got arrested in New Jersey. So I walked on stage. I said, "This San Francisco tourist town. Is any white men here from New Jersey? Because if y'all get back quick, because I think they've arrested all white men in New Jersey. And did you ever think you see today they make them many arrests in New Jersey and not one person get arrested in Newark? That's just me. I say school, as bad as those schools are in Newark, they had to let them out today because they needed school buses to take them white boys to jail. That was my life. Right. And so when I walked up on that stage, I was saying what was in the paper. And if you get my records and listen to them, 98% of the stuff I was talking about wasn't race and civil rights movement. That was just, if you listen to the news today, hour, 30 minutes, the biggest bulletin story, but there's 20 minutes of other news that we don't even hear. Right. So that's what that was.
We talked about how you influenced Bill Cosby and Richard Pryor. Now, when we talk about these two men, are we just talking about comedians, or did they have a greater impact on society?
Bob Hope ain't never changed nothing. Bob Hope have never changed nothing. No tap dancer. Fred Astaire ain't never fixed it so little children can eat. That never changed nothing. Look, I don't expect nothing out of a football player, but outrun God. When I get on that field, I ain't looking for you to liberate me. Play football.
So this raises another interesting point. A lot of people will look at a LeBron James, a superstar athlete, a superstar entertainer like a Richard Pryor or a Bill Cosby or a P. Diddy, and they'll say because that person is so successful and they're a black man that they have a responsibility to be a role model and to be a tool for changing social injustice.
It's because they're crazy.
You don't agree with that?
The mob. Do the mob have responsibility?
So an entertainer doesn't have an inherent responsibility.
Most entertainers up until recently couldn't even read or write. Hadn't been out of college getting passes, just shooting them through. That's who. Look, we got the record. We didn't get liberated by entertainers. You're not sitting across from this table where you are now because some comedians. It was serious people, black and white, that saw this thing needed to be done, and we were willing to commit with our lives to do it. Now, Muhammad Ali, he's an exception, okay? You can't even class him with the rest of the athletes. But LeBron James, what have he done? I mean, actually, what have they done? I don't want him to do nothing but shoot that ball, man. Me and Shaq is good friends. Shoot that ball, Shaq. You know, but when you stop and think about the two greatest losers with Obama winning the election. See, we won before Obama was elected. When he did those 3 debates with McCain, 90 minutes, and with the glamour and the excitement, worldwide television audience got to see for the first time a black person talk an hour and 30 minutes without a javelin or basketball or outrunning God with a football. That had never happened before. And so all at once now, I can look at you, I can close my eyes and look at you and see, and I see Obama. I can't see Shaq. All at once the world won't see athletes no more.
He achieved because of his mind, not because he could sing or bounce a basketball.
We've always knew Obama. People say, oh, Michelle raised us. It was our aunt, it was our niece, it was our school teachers. We've always, white folks wasn't privileged to see him, okay? And so consequently, when we say, he's not the first person that qualified to be president, he's the first one because a lot of people died and lost certain things in their life to see to it. You know, I'm insulting when people say, did you ever think when the movement, you see a Negro president or African, look. We did not go out there with our life to get a black person in the White House. We went out there to see to it that all blacks had a right to vote. That's what we were there for. We wasn't out there saying, oh man, if we do this. Now, you know who knew? Which kind of bugs me now, and I might apologize to them one day. The Ku Klux Klan, them old redneck, uneducated, they knew one thing. If you give them niggas the right to vote, they'd be in the White House. They knew that when the president of Harvard didn't know that. They knew that when we didn't know it. Now I understand why they was burning the churches. I understand why they was killing children and shooting white folks in the movement. They knew something we didn't know. Why? Because they was close to us. See, in the South, they don't care how close you get as long as you don't get too big. Up north, they don't care how big you get as long as you don't get too close. And they knew. You'd hear white folks for this movement start saying, yeah, you know, I'm the smartest boy on the planet. There's that Negro fella that works for me. And they wasn't lying. So they knew who we was. And they knew what that resistance. So now, the world, up until Obama, felt something coming out of here when it come to African Americans. They didn't know what it was because they see golf, they see basketball, they see tennis and all of that. All at once now, when Obama come through, you got people saying, Jesus, if you can run the most powerful country in the world, maybe I should pick someone to run my company. That's what you're looking at now. Mm-hmm. They couldn't say that with an athlete. And before, the closest they could endear me as an African American is the only thing they ever knew was an athlete. So they gave them glamour. You could drive down the street and they catch you with all kind of drugs and swear it wasn't enough for athletes, okay? But that day is over now. All at once, that day can never happen again.
We talked about the fact that we have an African-American president now in the White House. You were born in St. Louis in 1932. You attended Sumner High School, got a track scholarship to Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. Flash forward to today. What has changed in terms of the relationship between the races and discrimination and segregation? What has changed between the time when you were growing up here in St. Louis and now?
Can't answer that way. What have changed in America? Back then, physically, you was worried about getting hurt. You know, black folks worried about getting lynched. It could happen, but we would be shocked. You know, police brutality. Hey, man, me and my brother went out the street and police beat me half to death. You know, the folks say, thank God he didn't hit both y'all, okay? That day is over. You got 5 major cities in America, about every 3.5 years, they pay out $2 billion settling police brutality cases out of court. They never had to do that before. It's the whole physical demeanor. And with the TV, when someone said, do you realize I was in London at the top of my game, man, pocket full of money, and I see 2 black Ethiopian jet pilots. And I call my wife crying, so maybe change my flight. I go to London tomorrow. I'm not moving until these pilots. 2 Negro pilots, man, driving a commercial. I had never seen that. And I said, God, if my children could just see. You know, I come through a time when you couldn't drive a train. White folks, you can't drive. Well, the sense I need, all I do is follow the damn tracks. You got to be smart to drive a damn train. Now, a bus, I'm not saying you're not going to drive because I would go to the party, but I can't get up. And so it's this whole piece of now. There is no difference. There are not words or instruments can measure. Give you an example. 45 years ago, when I'm running to Mississippi for my life, and I tell my wife, I say, kiss your children because the chances of us seeing it is 0. And King was saying love, no hate. I went along with it.
You weren't thrilled with the nonviolent?
No, I went along with it. You know, had me a gun at home. You know, now, could someone told me sitting across the table from you 45 years later, I could report you that a black man is head of the Mississippi State Troopers? That a black woman is head of social services? Think about where that's unreal. When you stop and think about all the black elected officials, because of that movement, that I didn't see it. They just had that spirit and felt, and willing to die. I was willing to die. I trusted them enough and watched what they was doing enough that if I had to die, I didn't mind it. But, you know, the Civil Rights Bill, one day somebody's going to have to go look at that real close because they didn't put for Negroes only. See? So it means when you go down the street now and see a white woman that's a cop or president of Harvard, we got her that. When I first started riding planes, a black man couldn't be a pilot. A black woman couldn't be a stewardess. A white woman couldn't be a pilot. A white woman couldn't be a mechanic. The only thing a white woman could do on a commercial airline, she could be a stewardess, but she had to look like something off the center page of Playboy magazine. Because of the civil rights legislation that didn't say for Negroes only, anytime you get on a plane today and see an old, ugly, short, fat white steward, we got her that job. It came through that civil rights movement. Not through her brother, not through her daddy, not through the Marines. We did. When you see before this movement, a woman couldn't be a cop. You got women now, heads police department. That's what the reason we don't know it, in a racist, vicious system like this is, nobody tells you. And so even black folk get, I can't believe the amount of black folk that believe 13 is an unlucky number. All over the world, 13 not unlucky, but it's the 13th Amendment that freed me, and they don't even know that's why. That's why it's unlucky.
You have approximately 1/3 of African American men incarcerated. You have black pregnancy, teenage rates that are through the roof. You have the drug problem that continues to plague urban America. I mean, a lot of people say you look at these social ills, and for as far as we've come since the movement, how much progress have we actually made?
You know, we would like to believe that everything was all right and then it got bad. We've always had more black folks in jail than white folks. It's called, can you afford a lawyer? Okay? That's what it's called. Can you afford a lawyer? And so when you stop and think about, sure, I get drunk. You know, we know about John Hope Franklin, one of the brilliant minds on the planet. And the world have never been the same because of his writing and his research on race relations. His brother was smarter than him, but he couldn't get a break. So he became an alcoholic and committed suicide. What's this game about? Do you know how many people, when they realize they can't take care of their family? When I heard the president at the NAACP convention, when I heard him talk about, you know, personal responsibility, I was angry because I love the fact he said, I'm not the president of just certain people, I'm the president of the whole country. And how come you don't talk about personal responsibility to the bankers? Huh? How come you don't talk about personal responsibility to Madoff? But let me tell you about personal responsibility, like I did that night when after hearing the speech and I had to speak. How my mother gonna help me with homework when she can't read or write? Huh? Then if you're concerned about me, how come you don't have study centers like you have McDonald's? Let me tell you about personal responsibility. If you go do the research, you will find out that St. Louis had never produced a human being like I was. It was the talk of, okay? Yet, my mother couldn't come to my graduation because she didn't feel she had the proper clothes. Let me tell you about personal responsibility. Huh? She didn't want nobody laughing at me, man. My mama. And I'm gonna listen to some thug that's gonna tell me about personal responsibility. The problem in the black community ain't no black man. That's an insult. They never talked about Jack the Ripper had a mother and father at home. Huh? Listen, here's how I pattern my life. I have never learned how to type because Queen Elizabeth don't type. I pattern my life after her. Right? Now, wait a minute. Queen Elizabeth been married to the same man. Huh? They live in the palace. Huh? She's one of the richest white women in the world because the Chinese woman is the richest, right? You can't find no messed up, dysfunctional children than hers. Tell me about a man at home. What's this game about? We're the only people in America, or maybe the world, black folks, can start off at the bottom of the pit and make it to the top in one generation. And you trace that to the black woman in the black church. And so when you look at Jesse Jackson, outside of America, he's rated as one of the fine minds on the planet. Didn't know where his daddy was. Mother wasn't educated. The only black person right now on the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, no daddy. Mama couldn't read or write, worked in a hotel. One generation. The Kennedys, it took them 12, stealing, murdering, doing all kinds of stuff. You got a black man that's the governor of an all-white state, Deval Patrick. Born and raised in housing project in Chicago, left there, ended up at Harvard Law School, so brilliant, ExxonMobil picked him out and put him head of the law. Clinton made him U.S. attorney in a white state, and now he's governor. One generation, that black woman. Okay? One day when all the emotions is gone, and one day when the truth will be told, the real truth will come out. I'm not judged by who my daddy was. I'm not judged by the conditions that surround me. People say, well, y'all got to stop complaining. Y'all got to stop. Well, y'all complain about Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ was here 2,000 years ago. They still tell me what they did to him. And so somewhere when I look and I count, because I was there, I don't have to be validated. When I say nobody in the history have made the progress that black folks have made in a 40-year period, in spite of black folks and white folks lying to one another. A black person today with a PhD is 85 times more likely to be rejected when they first go get a mortgage than a white boy that dropped out of high school. When do that get filtered in?